Hello, it's Kathleen, and welcome to Level Up Your English with Kathleen Elise. Today we are on our 8th episode, so congratulations for making it this far and just really investing in yourself and your English fluency. So I've left a note in the chat to just introduce yourself, where you're tuning in from, and what your native language is. And we've said this before. I ask for your native language if you want to share it, because it helps me to know how to gear the lives. So, if I'm familiar with the language, then I can know how to help you, especially if we're talking about pronunciation or an understanding of how to make sounds, or whether you have the sound in your own language or not. If I'm familiar with it, I can help you figure that stuff out. And if I'm not, and I see that there's a language I'm not familiar with, then I can be researching it and studying it so that the next time you come, I can have a really good understanding of how to help you. So, and again, the reason that we show up here, the reason that I come and have these lives, is so that you can have a real life native American English speaking person helping you out with your questions, with your anything you're struggling with. I'm here to give you that real life feedback, immediate. You ask the question, I answer it for you right then and there, so you don't have to sit and struggle any longer. So that's why I ask for your native language. So today we're talking about the what I call the 4 finer points of developing fabulous English pronunciation. So I have talked about these before, but I figured it was a good idea. I've seen a lot of instances of poor pronunciation by people who really they're pretty good at the language. Their grammar is great, etc. But the pronunciation is either incorrect or they've misunderstood the original. So we'll go through these 4 points. I just have my notes over here. That's why I keep popping over here. We'll go through these 4 points so that they'll be in the front of your mind, not the back of your mind, the front of your mind, as you are now continuing to on your English fluency journey. So the first thing that you really need to do is to listen, okay? Listen to the sounds, because remember, pronunciation and speaking a language, it's all about the sounds. It's not about the spelling. If you're writing, then it's about the spelling, okay? But speaking is all about the sounds that you're producing with your mouth. So I can never decide whether to take my glasses off or leave them on. I can't see my notes without them, but the glare drives me crazy. Anyway, sorry. So you really have to listen. And one thing, and I'm really fully understanding this note now, because again, as many of you know, I'm learning Korean, and it's a completely different experience for me than when I was learning Spanish or German or the little bit of French that I've picked up. Korean is just completely different. With German and French and Spanish, the symbols for the sounds that are made are familiar. There are some symbols in, like the umlaut in German, or, where the accents go in French or Spanish. That took a minute, but it was easier for me to read and therefore to piece together the sounds and how they matched up with the letters because everything was familiar to me. In Korean, the alphabet is nothing like I've ever been exposed to, and so it's difficult for me. I can do the sounds, if I'm not looking at the writing, I can say the sounds. But when I try to match it up, I have a terrible time reading it. My brain just freezes when I go to read it. So it's start with the sounds, get the sounds down. Because when you think about it, when you first learned your own language, you weren't born and immediately started reading it. You had 5 or 6 years before you started reading and writing, before you learned what the alphabet was, really. Um, so you had 5 years of listening and imitating and reproducing the sounds of your own language before you ever started writing. So speaking your language is is all about reproducing sounds. And if you don't reproduce them correctly, then you're not getting your message across. If you don't produce them correctly, people aren't going to know what you're talking about. They're not going to understand you. So focus right now. Forget your alphabet. Don't forget the grammar, but don't focus on the grammar. Focus on reproducing the sounds correctly and completely. Okay. So, so the the point of me saying that, or another point, is if you're learning by watching um, TV shows or music lyrics or anything like that, even if you have the captions here on the video, initially you're going to need it. But when you come back to listen to this as a listening practice, turn off the captions because they distract you. I find that when I go to watch, videos in Korean, I will, I find myself just reading the captions and my brain gets lazy. So my brain doesn't have to put anything together because I'm just reading it in English. I'm reading the captions. So turn off the captions and let your brain focus on the sounds um, and let your brain do its job. You've studied your alphabet, maybe you've studied certain words. Well, now take the time, let your shut the captions off and let your brain put those sounds together and tell your mouth what to do when you go to reproduce the sounds. Okay, that's super important if you want to be able to speak fluently. um, and again, when you're fluent in a language, it's not the mechanics. Fluency in a language is, yes, you need the mechanics. You need to know the grammar. You need to know how to put the sounds that you're learning together in the proper rhythms and the proper structures so that um, people can understand what you're saying and that what you're saying makes sense according to the rules of the language. But it goes way beyond just grammar. It has to do with producing the sounds along with the grammar and the mechanics, but in a way that the person whose language you're speaking understands what you're saying. So you could know how to pronounce a word. You could know how to say it. And you could know the order to put it in, you could know all the stuff. You could know all the complicated bits of the language. But if you're not producing the sounds in a manner that the person who speaks that language can understand, all of that other effort means nothing because the person can't understand what you're saying, doesn't know what you mean. And the purpose of being fluid and being fluent is to have a smooth, easy transfer of ideas from one person to the next. So you have to be, and being clear is part of that. Okay. Um, so, which, okay. This kind of puts my things out of order, but we'll keep that in mind and we'll come back to that whole thought in a minute about clear communication. So listen first, ignore all the other stuff, listen to the sounds, focus on the sounds first. Okay. The second thing you want to do, once you've listened and you're really familiar with the sounds of the language, and I'm not even talking about whole words. I'm talking about, okay, you have your alphabet. Well, that alphabet is a physical representation of a specific sound. So in English, the letter A, A is the physical representation of a few different sounds. It could be the physical representation of A, the name of the letter. It could be the physical representation of the long A as in cake, so A, cake. It could be the physical representation of the short sound of A, ah, as in, I don't know, ah, aha. There's other words not coming to my mind right now. And it could also be the ah as in cat and hat and bat. That's going to bother me. What is an ah, a word with ah in it? It'll come to me at some point. So, um, so listen, be familiar with the sounds of the language. And again, English is a tricky one because it's a compilation, a combination of many different languages that have their own spelling rules, their own sounds, etc. That the English language, English speaking people assimilated into their language. You have many different spellings for the same sound. You have many different physical representations for the same sound. And the word trough, Trough, or the Ough sound, or combination, has many different sounds. Okay, so that's a good example. So listen to the sounds first, become familiar. The second thing you want to do is then you want to watch the mouth movements. Watch what people do with their mouth in order to produce those sounds. All right. And there's obviously YouTube is a gold mine as far as that is concerned. So when you're speaking to someone in real life or you're watching a video, watch what they do with their mouth, okay? Especially with sounds that you have trouble with, okay? Especially with sounds that you might not have in your language. Watch what happens, watch what they do. And it's not just how my mouth goes up and down. It has to do with the tongue. If you can see what happens with the tongue, if you can notice whether their jaw is tight, whether it's tall, or whether it's wide. So one thing I noticed learning Korean is many of the sounds, the mouth is wide and the tongue is flatter and looser on the floor of the mouth to create the sounds. But in English, your mouth is um, taller and your tongue is all over the place for different things, and your tongue moves quickly. Whereas Korean, you can do many sounds with just minor changes with your tongue in a lower, more relaxed position. So you really need to pay attention to what's happening, the tenseness of the jaw, um, how quickly the person is speaking. Listen to the sounds, the highs and the lows, the quick speech or the longer speech. Uh, all of that has to do with fluency and with clear pronunciation. And again, particularly in English, because this actually, I'm just thinking of now, I forgot about it in my notes. In English, the how you highlight certain parts of the word, certain sounds within the word, determines which word you're saying. So, and I've used this example before. If you have the word spelled Content, okay, you can say that two ways and have two different words. So if you put the accent on, if you highlight the first syllable, content, content, that is what that is. Content is what is contained within. So, and we say social media content because the stuff we're putting out is contained within social media, okay? Or the contents of the book, the things like that. So that's one word. But if you highlight the last syllable in that same spelling, content, then what you're saying is that you're satisfied. Oh, I'm content with that. This, I'm happy with that. I'm content with the job I did. Okay? Two completely different words. They're not even related in any way, shape, or form. So fluency is part of that too. So pay attention to that and watch what happens when people say, when people switch the emphasis from one part of the word to the next. Whether they switch the emphasis or not makes a difference. In English it does. In other languages it doesn't. I'm in Korean, I'm learning that it's more of an even emphasis on all the parts of the word. So at least initially anyway, until you get going, I guess. I'm not 100% sure. We're still in the early stages, but so it makes a difference. So anyway, listen and then watch. Then what you need to do is you need to put them together and you need to reproduce that yourself and do whatever you can to get your jaw, your mouth working, your vocal cords. In English, there are many words that we have the voice activated and other sounds, I should say, that we don't, and all within the same word. So the third step is to kind of put all of that together and just keep repeating. It's like exercising. If you want a six-pack abs, or abs that look like a six-pack, then you have to do certain exercises repeatedly in order to attain that. So it's the same with your language. And so, it's you do it repeatedly, not only to refine it and fine tune the sound so that it's accurate, but also to get your brain to know where all of this has to be in place in order to reproduce the sound. And it's a muscle memory is what we call it. Um, so that's just, you have to practice. And if you don't, then you won't be fluent. You might be able to understand and you might be able to converse, but it won't be as good as it could be. And you deserve better than just kind of good enough. Okay. So know that it might be tedious and it's definitely going to be frustrating. In the end, it will definitely be worth it because you will be clear and it just won't be a problem anymore. So anyway, and I just want to, let's see. Yeah, so here's just some examples. I'm going to give you some examples of these three things put together before we move on to the final one. So here I have the bonus note here I have is that you need to finish out your sounds. So many people think that fluency is all about speed and getting to the end of the sentence as quickly as possible. That's not the goal of communication. The goal of communication and ultimately fluency is being clear in your message. And if you don't finish out your words, people aren't going to know what you're talking about. And here are some examples. So, and actually, some of these examples are from teachers of English. They're not native English speakers, so they've had to learn it themselves. And so, but they're missing some pieces. They're super good at their knowledge is great, but nobody helped them, nobody corrected them, or these little issues weren't corrected, and so it can cause a problem. And as a teacher or as a professional, you don't want to make these mistakes because it just doesn't help you and your image and your reputation that you've worked so hard to build. Okay, so so unfinished words here. These are some examples of unfinished words. The person was trying to say really depends. So, X really depends on whether you do Y or not. So, but what happened there, what was said was redepend, redepend. That's not a word. And the person was speaking quickly, not finishing out the words and moving on with the sentence. So the English speaking person that you're speaking to now has to completely stop the flow of your message, completely stop and take all sorts of time to try to figure out what you just said. Meanwhile, you've moved on and they've completely lost what's going on. So finish out your words. So and make sure, slow yourself down. Redepend isn't anything, really depends. And the more you practice, the faster you'll get and the smoother you'll be, the clearer your message will be. Okay. So if you're a person who thinks that the speed is the ultimate goal, write yourself a note, put it on your computer, put it anywhere you need to put it. Slow down. Get it right first, and the speed will come. Okay. So redepend. What was the other one? Okay, so soda. Actually, these have two issues here. The person was trying to say sold the. So that D to the TH sound is a difficult transition. The person who is saying it does not have the TH sound in their language. The closest they have is the D sound. So I get that. I understand you don't have it. It's hard to remember to say it. But again, this is where the first step comes into play. Really get familiar with the sounds. Forget about your language. Forget about comparing them. And this is hard for people. Forget about comparing your language to English. Just focus on learning English, okay? And the sounds. So this person needs to work on the L sound in order to make that word, that statement happen. So, I sold the car. I sold a car. It's not, soda's not a verb. And so therefore the English speaking person wouldn't understand you. So there you go. Make sure number one, make sure you're thinking in English. And number two, make sure you finish out your words. Sold the. And I've been putting out a couple of what I call transitional agility exercises. So I've just started with those. So I'm going to try to keep building on those and using examples that I come across that my students have trouble with. That's one of them. So, and the other one was this one, the person had trouble with the letter L. They don't have it. This person doesn't have it in the language, the native language. So they were trying to say tangled up. The chords are all tangled up. But what happened, because the L was difficult, and again, trying to speak fast, and I think sometimes people speak fast to cover over the stuff they're unfamiliar with. Do yourself a favor, spend the time, get familiar with the sounds, and do the work, and then you won't have to have all that stress of trying to hide and cover things up. Do the work, practice a little bit at a time, makes a big difference. So what the person ended up saying was tangle up. I think the D was in there. I'm not 100% sure, but tangled up, tangle, ooh. And again, tangu is not a word in English. It might be in another language. It's just not in English. Tangled up. So I'm gonna try to put together a video on these, and those I'll put them here too, but I'll probably post them on my Instagram account first, and then put them here under the morning meetings playlist. Okay. And then the other one was, again, the D and the TH. It should, actually, there's a few issues here. So the person, again, didn't have the TH. So the closest this person knew was a D. And also the V. This person's language didn't have the V. Okay. So combining a bunch of these, as well as not finishing out the word, it doesn't make any sense. So the person said dro drew deny. I've used this example before. The person was trying to say drove through the night. Okay, so you can see the difference. You can see how much of a big deal this is when one thing adds to another, and you're trying to speak fast, and you're trying to do everything at once. So it's just super, super important to get familiar with the sounds. Put your own language aside. Don't compare it. Listen, watch, practice. Put the two together. Practice. Slow yourself down. Make sure you finish out all your sounds and work on your transitions. If you have difficulty, work on it. Like I said, I'm going to try to put together more agility exercises for you so that to help you with that. Okay. Because again, you can know all the words, you can have the best vocabulary, you can be a super genius on grammar and punctuation and grammar, and well, punctuation will come later, but you can be amazing at all of the technical cerebral knowledge. But if you don't execute it properly, it's not going to mean anything to anybody. Okay. And I want you to succeed. I'm here for you. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. You've worked so hard to get where you are, to put all these confusing things together, and then to have it come to mean nothing would be a shame and absolute tragedy. So I'm here to help. And then, um, yeah, so again, here's just some examples of thinking in English. I have many Spanish speaking students, and this the trouble that they seem to have is again thinking in Spanish but trying to speak in English, and again it just doesn't work. Um, you know, again they have the sound of the sound of B, the letter B, but in Spanish, that sound is used for the letter V. All right. And so when they see words in English with the letter V in it, they're thinking in Spanish. And so my students are constantly saying the B sound for the letter V, and it, a video, or victory, or vegetarian, so people can figure out what you're trying to say, but if you have that combined with other other things, they all compile, and it's just so much work for the person that you're trying to speak with to do, just to put together what you're trying to say, um, that it just, I hate to see that for you. So you get the idea. I do have other examples, but we're running out of time. So the fourth thing that I want you to talk about, or that I want you to keep in mind, the fourth key here, to really fine-tuning your pronunciation in English, is to record yourself, both on video like this, but also just audio. Just take your phone and, t- you know, just talk into your phone. And the reason I say this, and many other teachers will tell you to do this, is so that you can see yourself and you can hear yourself from the other person's point of view. Okay, and you also have something to compare. You could go online, you can have your video or your audio, you can go online and find someone who's talking maybe about a similar topic or whatever, or maybe you could get a transcript of a show you like, and you can read it, record yourself reading it, and then play it back alongside of the show that you got the transcript from, and you can compare it to that native resource, that native source. Okay. It's excellent, 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 an excellent exercise for you to really see, oh, I thought that I was clear, but I'm really not. If when I'm listening to it, that does I don't know what I'm saying, or oh, I got better. That's better than the last time. Or oh, wow, I actually understood it better than I thought, seeing it against the real thing. So it's a super amazing exercise. It might be a little discouraging at first, but it won't take long for you to see progress. It's really a fluency accelerator to do that. So, and just quickly before we go, Again, I try to keep these as close to half an hour as I can, but the more I talk about this, the more I can talk about it. So, um, just a couple of extra points. So, if you're learning English from a non-native English English speaker, okay, and by native English speaker, what I mean is if you're native to the main English speaking group that you're going to be speaking with. So if you're going to be speaking with people from London and any of the British Isles, well, get a teacher from there who grew up there, who understands the culture and the idioms and just all sorts of everything about working with, communicating with British speaking people, okay? British English speaking people. If you're going to be working in Australia, well, learn from someone who's in Australia, who grew up, was raised in Australia, because they're going to understand that way of doing things. And, English speaking cultures are very similar, but there are also, Australia and the United States are thousands of miles apart. you know s- m- far more than England and America, and yet look at how different the customs are and the mannerisms are, etc. So, or Canada and the United States of America, we're neighbors. We literally neighbors, and we're different people. Many things are similar, but we have different cultures for different reasons. So it's super important if you really want to accelerate your fluency, really find a native English speaking teacher, because, as we've seen, a couple of reasons too. The non-native English speaking teacher isn't going to have the understanding of the customs, the mindset, the mentality, um, you know, uh, uh, all sorts of things like that are essential to communicating with that particular culture. Um, there are not many. I've had students who are English teachers or teachers of English as a foreign language who teach in their own country. They have advanced degrees in their own country. And yet, one of my students said, Kathleen, I've been with you a week and I've never learned any of this stuff in all my years of schooling to be a teacher. So they just might not know that the non native teacher just might not have been taught all the stuff they really need to know to help you become fluent. They're going to be great on grammar, and I'll tell you that right now. So if you need to understand grammar, it's perfectly fine and they're probably better on grammar than, than maybe English, native teachers, because it's just so hard and we don't take it seriously, I guess, in many ways. Kids in school, how much did you take your own grammar for seriously? So just if you want to advance your English speaking capabilities, really think about working with a native English speaking teacher. Okay. And then when you're learning words, okay, go to many different sources, go to native speakers, look online for the different ways that people from different English speaking traditions say things. Because again, I might listen to a word being pronounced or some phrase or whatever and think, that's crazy. That's not correct. But with some research, I'm going to find out, oh, it's correct over there. It's correct for that English speaking community, um, tradition. It wouldn't be correct for me and my tradition, but it is correct there. So get different, um, what did I just say? Just get different resources. Just get it from different different areas. I don't know why I can't come up with words tonight. It's not working. Um, Sources, that's what I mean, and different traditions. And then also check the spellings too, because the first time I heard someone say aluminium, I thought, well, that's crazy. You don't know how to read because the word is aluminum. However, when I looked it up, it's that aluminium is how it's spelled in the British tradition, the British English tradition. Whereas in America, we say aluminum, so it's spelled aluminum. So make sure that you check your spellings and, hyphens and things like that, because that's important. And then I think that was it. I think that was it. So anyway, I'm just going to recap real quick. I've gone much longer than I intended. So listen first, listen to the sounds, get familiar with the sounds, forget everything else you've ever known, start fresh, listen to the sounds, okay? Then you want to watch the mouth mechanics. Then you want to practice the mouth mechanics to get the correct sound that you've just spent all that time listening to, okay? Watch, listen, watch, practice, put them together. That's the third one. That's work on replicating it and do it till you get it right. And then record yourself, both audio and video, and then play it back so you can see how you sound to the listener. Okay, you be the listener and objectively say, "Boy, do I understand that?" or "Wow, I really do." Okay, and don't forget, finish out your words. Work on the sounds that you have trouble with and the transitions. So get them smooth and get them clear. It's better. You want accuracy first. The speed will come with practice. Okay, so slow down. Give yourself a break, take the pressure off, and go from there. Okay. So, yeah, we're beyond what I wanted to do. I won't go beyond an hour, but I like to keep with half an hour. So, anyway, put your questions in the chat, in the comments, whatever. And I'll make sure that they get answered. If not on this one, on the next one, I will make sure that they get answered. So, anyway, great having you here tonight. I hope this really helped. I feel discombobulated tonight. I feel a little scattered. So I believe I covered everything, but if not, I'll be going live at noon Eastern time today. So in about 12 hours, I'll be going live again. So if you have questions, come then or throw them in the comments now and I'll address them during that live. Okay. So great to have you here. I'm so glad. I hope this helped you. And well, if we don't see you at noon, I will see you next week. Okay. You just have a great night. Bye-bye.